Hello, this is Dr. Caroline O'Sullivan speaking, and you are watching Holistic Pet Care with Dr. O. We are blessed today to have Jody Kerin and Fallen Feather Rescue and Rehabilitation. And we're going to be talking for this hour about rescue and rehab, and the next hour about, let's say, what do you do if you find a bird? What do we do about catch and release? What do we do about raptors? What do we do about trying to rehab these guys? And what do we do about educating people about these birds? So, welcome, Jody. How are you?
You're doing terrific today. I hope you're doing the same.
Oh my gosh, everything is perfect. Now, now you are the expert in this field, so I'm going to leave this
And
broadly up to you.
I wouldn't say an expert, but I know a little more than some people. Let's go ahead.
So you are shockingly humble, definitely shopping and humble. And I see that today you have one of my new friends with you for our show. I just met her when I went to go visit Jody and her wonderful facility last week, and I'm kind of falling in love with this bird. So tell us a little bit about your friend, will you?
Well, this is Roxanne here, and she's a green wing macaw. She was brought to us by unfortunately, somebody had left a bunch of exotics at a pet hospital to get their wings clipped and never came back for them. So she is one of the group that the owner didn't come back.
Right. Now, we have a lot to go over, and I want to make sure that we make the best use of this wonderful situation and your time, because I know it's so valuable. Why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about your organization and what it is that you spend all your time doing and how you got there in your life. And I know it's a wonderful story, and then we'll get into some of the things about responsible ownership and some of the obligations and information that goes along with that, so maybe less birds will end up at your doorstep than they do currently. What do you think?
That sounds terrific. Basically, I am Jody. I'm with a group called Fallen Feathers, and we take care of orphaned and injured wild birds, and we rehab them and we put them back into the wild. We also take in the exotics. It didn't start out being our main focus, but when people found out that I knew about birds, we started getting the calls. The first one was basically a blue budgie that a woman had, and she didn't want it anymore, and if I didn't take it, she was going to throw it out into the wild. And it would be a death sentence for the bird, and that's where it kind of started trickling, and now we have a whole section that is now exotics.
Now, when I was there, I came into your home, which is where this wonderful thing, the creation, is, and one of the wonderful people that has volunteers had told me that you take in 1,000 birds a year, and I thought that that was a number, just possibly a number. So I did some math in my head, and I came up, oh, that's 3 birds a day. And son of a gun, if the 6 hours I spent with you, you guys got 3 birds in. And I kind of thought it was a euphemism or kind of a joke, but you guys really do 1,000 more birds a year. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, because we're licensed by the state and the federal government, we have to keep track of the birds, what comes in, where it comes from, what we ended up doing with it, and what the final outcome is. And that's why we know that number. I really don't count how many birds we have at the moment here at the facility, or the house, I should say, so that my husband doesn't know.
You know, that's a perfectly reasonable and rational thing to think, isn't it? Because your husband is just a really awesome supporter. I saw him in action within half an hour of being at your place, but super supportive, isn't he? I mean, you have to have a support system like that.
Definitely. There's definitely, we are going to need a facility eventually, because we have outgrown a lot of our space here. I have a fairly decent sized home because I raised 6 kids here. But we do need to probably look at getting this probably out of his kitchen eventually.
Well, I mean, that's just life now. Life with the birds is what you guys have decided to do. Okay, so when you guys take in birds from civilians, folks like myself, because they, just can't take them anymore, you do rehab, rescue if I have a fallen bird or I found a down bird, and we'll talk about that next hour. But if you were to talk to folks such as myself who were thinking about bringing a bird into my life, and let's say I'm starting at that. Very, very basic. I just want a bird in my life. Now, as you know now, I'm kind of leaning towards the type of bird that's sitting behind. Yeah, I know. There's something about her. I just got to come see her this week. So, but that's a perfectly reasonable um, purchase from a person like me if we didn't ask the right questions, know what I'm getting into, and I know it's a long talk, but would you mind helping us out with that? Help me out, make a really great decision.
The first thing, we do get a lot of calls, people just want a bird. And unfortunately, a lot of people will think that they want one as an accessory to their home, a decoration, something that matches the carpets. Quite often we get birds to come in. Hold on a second. Grab a bird and bring one in for us, Tamara. Yeah, bring in an exotic. I've got one of the volunteers that just showed up here. We're going to have her bring in an exotic to join us too.
That'll be great. That will be great. Yeah.
So a lot of times we have volunteers that show up at all times of the day, and she happened to be off school, and she comes over and helps us out for sometimes. So that's terrific.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what we're going to do is they really think that they're getting an accessory. So the first thing we ask them is, have you had a bird before? And even if someone's had a bird before, you usually want to find out why they don't have the bird anymore.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right.
You find out. A lot of them will say, well, it was just too noisy. The biggest complaints that we have about birds is it's too loud, it's too noisy, it's too messy, and it bites.
Well, it's a bird. I mean, it's a bird. That's what they do, right? That's like saying buying a puppy, but they don't want it to rip up their house or poop on their floor or bark at the front door. I mean, it's a puppy. You have birds. That's what they're going to do, right?
Oh, I have to tell you that one of our other volunteers, Mariko, I happened to get one of these calls this weekend with someone who wanted the perfect bird. And came running into the other room, and I have to show you this. She goes, I have the bird for her. If you want something that doesn't poop, doesn't make noise, doesn't bite, you need a stuffed animal. Otherwise, you really need to investigate what it is that you're looking at getting. Adoption policy is so different from a lot of people. I want to stop the trend where the average bird has 7 homes in its lifetime.
Oh, okay. Does that absolutely break your heart? I mean, how seven homes? Now, that's very sad for me because can you imagine you're bonded, which we'll talk about bonding. Hi, Roxanne. So we're bonded, and then your parents basically abandon you 7 times in your lifetime. I can't. It's inconceivable for me. And then go ahead. And then the obligation going in that the information that you're trying to provide people is so crucial to that lifetime relationship, isn't it? 7 times. Jeez, oh crow.
It's death. They don't know that you've abandoned them and you've just turned them in and gone off and doing other things. Quite often the bird will think that the family has died, and they'll actually go through a mourning process.
Yes.
So that's a whole other aspect of it too. That's why I do encourage people when they drop a bird off that they can't keep for whatever reason, come and visit the bird. Let the bird know that things are still okay because you're their source of comfort until they get here, and then we change the dynamics. But it's good not to just totally walk away. So we're talking about, come on in, Tamara. We're talking about, this is Tamara here.
Hi, Tamara.
Okay. So,
hi, Tamara.
Hi. So she's got a little Quaker here with her, and got another one down here. But we do want someone to know what it is. So our adoption policy is you have to come and volunteer and help us. And while you're here, you play with the birds, you get to know the birds, and interact with them, and then we kind of try and find a love connection. If a bird starts to like you, and this is where it becomes a totalitarian society, I get to decide, we'll let you take it home for a sleepover. You take it home for a couple of days, bring it back, talk about how it went. If it went well, we continue the time it stays with you and not with me. And if not, we'll try another bird. And so that's what we need to do, and my phone is ringing. So.
Oh, I honestly thought a bird was making that noise. I'm like, what kind of bird do you have that's making that kind of noise?
So I apologize for that.
That's okay. That's okay.
So then we do what I call is a sleepover, where you take the bird for a couple of days, bring it back. We talk about how it went. If it went well, we keep extending the time it stays with you and not with me. And if not, we try another bird. And that's the way the adoptions go. I do not charge a fee. The bird will come with a cage. It may not be the greatest cage in the world, but he's going to have a cage. We'll give you a little bit of food so you're not going out and making a huge expense before the bird is actually yours. Once the bird's yours, then we will go ahead and let you take on the food section.
Now you mentioned food just then. So you go and you do what you call, I think I remember you saying, sweat equity. You
Yes.
come and you clean cages, you interact, you help these birds, and of course deal with you and all the wonderful volunteers you have there, and then you get this love connection with a bird. Hopefully it works out great. And then the bird goes home with the cage and with the toys and with the food. Now you were brilliant when you were talking about feeding these guys, because different kinds of birds, it's not just like feeding a dog, let's say, where there's dog food, and don't get me wrong, there's tons of wonderful variety for dog food, but birds require, depending on what kind they are, different foods, right? Is it seed? Is it fruit? Is it meat? Is it what? So talk to me about the wonderful things you will tell people when it comes to feeding a bird.
The first thing to look at is what are they eating wild. That's going to tell you a lot right there. We want to stay away from colors, even though they're pretty for us. A lot of the colors are added dyes that aren't really necessary for them. We also want to realize that birds, when they're out in the open and they're flying, they're getting a lot of exercise or shaking off a lot of carbs. And the guys that we have are sitting in cages most of the time. They're not flying around and getting the cardio that they really are used to having. So we have to be very careful to stay away from things like sunflower seeds and peanuts.
Yeah,
Uh,
our carbs.
the other two things that we really try and stay away from are avocados and bananas because they're very high in potassium and birds don't shed potassium. So,
And so explain to the world what the consequences are if a bird doesn't shed potassium.
well, I'm going to let you do a little bit more of that because I don't know all of the logistics of it. I know that it then is just a trickle down thing, which also leads to liver issues
Yes,
and
yes, exactly, exactly. So you're looking at liver and kidney with these guys, and that depending on stress and food and such, they don't process certain kinds of elements in their diet like we do, or any other creature does, and it's a bird-to-bird variation. So knowing your bird and knowing what you're feeding them, especially with potassium and some of those other elements, they do build up and they can cause problems. And I'm not a bird vet. You have your personal, wonderful boarded bird vet, the only one in the state. So I'm not trudging on that. It's just that we have to be careful. It's not the same as having a dog or a cat or a fish or a snake, or well, more like a snake than anything else. But really important that you know those things. So I appreciate that information about the banana and some of the other avocado and such. So go ahead. I'm sorry about that to interrupt.
oh, that's terrific. But that's kind of a lot of the food thing. We do try and get the birds on pellets as much as possible because it's just like if you have you sit down to dinner and you put your meat and your vegetables and your potatoes and your dessert. We all want to go for that dessert first. And
Right.
that's why we want to make sure to give them pellets where we can so they can't just eat the desserts and they're getting the good nutrition that they need.
And the pellets are a nutritionally complete diet, so they make them so that they get everything they need in a pellet versus having to add on to other things.
That depends on the brand.
Oh, okay, okay. So
And that's where you have to do your homework and double check that.
okay, all right. So just like everything else. Now, so we have somebody calling and wanting the perfect bird, which is of course a stuffed animal. If you're looking for the perfect bird, as you showed, right? And then if you decide to get one that actually needs care and love and wonder, your time and attention, talk to me about the obligation in bringing a bird into your life. You made some really good chronological recommendations about how old does a bird get in their brain and their emotions and their need for attention, but then how long will a bird, depending on the size and breed, actually be in your life? And when you say these things and these numbers, people actually think that you're kidding. And I think letting people know that you're not kidding and that this obligation sometimes goes far beyond my lifespan, I think that's going to be important for folks to know. So what do you think? What is your time obligation for these guys? What do you tell people that ask you?
Well, the first thing I tell them is most birds, especially the cockatoos, are 2-year-old for life. Birds such as Roxanne here can live over 100 years.
Yeah, yeah.
So you have to plan not just for your lifetime with the bird, but the after time also. So you need to look into things like who's going to take care of it? Are my children going to, or my family of any sort, or a friend? Or do I need to look into some place that can take them on once I'm not here to take care of them at that point?
Right, 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 right. And then we've never spoken about this together, but they do have wonderful trust funds. You can set up estates. You can do all of those wonderful things for your pets as family members to make sure that financially, not only you, I mean, you have a person to do it or an organization to do it, but you can financially make sure that they will be secure even after you pass. And I know it may seem like a morbid topic, but it's very, very important with these guys. Any animal that you love, be it your two-legged family or these guys, know that there are organizations set up, and lawyers, they're lawyers, right, that add to your trust fund or to your will to help these guys after you pass. Because like Roxanne behind you, literally 100 years, and people think you're kidding, but it's literal. It's very literal. That's true? Yes.
We actually have another green wing out in the garage right now that's 58 years old.
Right, 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 right. Gosh, it's just it's wonderful, and he seemed fairly healthy and happy, didn't he, out there when I saw him last week? Yeah, and he's only 58, which is hard to say. So he's only 58. Goodness. So
Yeah.
what about our financial obligations with veterinary bills? Like let's say that you bring a big bird into our house. What should I be expecting about going to see a veterinarian?
One of the things that you want to do, we should do for ourselves and for our pets, is they should get a yearly checkup.
Okay.
A lot of the things we recommend is that once you adopt a bird, that you take it in and get a baseline blood record. Because birds aren't real well known, where there's a huge amount of data that they can pull up, and this is the right blood levels for it, or hemoglobins and that, it's really best to get it when the bird is healthy so that later on, if there's a problem, we can cross-reference to see what's best for this bird.
Right, right. Right, you couldn't be more correct about that, because even with baselines and all the numbers that we do know, that each creature is quite different. So if you have a healthy, happy, eating, drinking, good-looking stool, good-looking, feather coat, and that's just how they are. Their numbers are these numbers, and their behavior is this. So when they do get off a little bit, we can compare apples to apples rather than apples to oranges or apples to a book somewhere. So you couldn't be more right about that. But let's say you've never had a bird before. Hi, sweetie. Then what do you expect at the veterinarian's office, right? Because it's not the same as bringing your kitty or doggy in a cart or on a leash. What are you expecting? What's the veterinarian going to be looking for with your bird?
They're going to be looking at a lot of things. Just as in a dog or a cat, they want to look in the eyes to make sure the eyes are clear, the nares, the ears. They also look at their feather quality, and that usually
Yes.
tells us a lot of story. A lot of people you can't fool when it comes to a bird a lot of the times. If you open their wings, you can see from the condition of the feathers how well the bird is being, if it's been sick or being cared for, being getting the right diet. It's going to show in the feathers. So I can tell you, be honest with your vet when you go in that, yeah, I have been giving them an awful lot of peanuts. They're going to be able to tell.
Now you also deal with your organization. You do, I guess, rescue at its very, very core. Birds that have been not treated well, birds that have been not fed well, birds that have been not treated well. And that I saw you do it when I was there last week, looking at the feathers, spreading their wings to see. And you showed me some really cool things that you would be looking for with regard to fractures and other things. And they're very different. The language that you use and what you're looking for with these birds, and I imagine you've seen it all, but especially the stories that you've told me about the conditions of some of these poor birds that you've gotten that have rehabbed so nicely. So what exactly are you looking for in the feathers, and what does the feather actually tell you? Not that we're diagnosing or treating or asking anyone to do that by looking at their bird's feathers, but tell me, what story does the feather tell you?
At the time the feather is developing, it actually has a blood supply in the feather. And then as the feather grows out and it starts to mature, it does what we call hard pinning, where the blood supply then will dry up in the middle of the feather, causing the feather to be stronger structurally and to help with flight. So during the time when the feather is being created, at that point, it's also going to show what's going on inside of the body. If you aren't feeling well, if there's a lot of stress, especially baby birds from the wild we get in, we can usually tell when they fell out of the nest, because there's going to be like, it's almost like somebody took a whip and cracked it, and there'll be a straight line through the feather that'll
Right.
show you where it is.
Right.
There's also the fact that the feathers have barbs in them, and the barbs hook to each other. And if they're not hooking properly, that usually means that something was going on diet-wise to not give it that ability to create those proper barbs. And the barbs then create a mesh, which allows the bird to be able to get that flight.
Oh, that's perfect, isn't it? Now, when you, let's say you're at the veterinarian, or you're getting a new bird, or you guys get a bird in from a questionable situation, you guys in your facility there are blessed with a really great, really knowledgeable veterinarian. Now, please tell us how rare that is, that you guys have access to not only a veterinarian that's seen, held, and were educated with books on a bird, but one that has chosen to spend their life taking care of birds. How is that different? The doctor you have versus people that put up something that says, yeah, I have an interest in birds as a veterinarian. How is that different? In a very positive way, but we need to know, right? Because it's so different.
The thing for people to realize is they really don't teach birds in vet school. Birds are actually a 2-week elective, which you can probably attest to. And it's more on how to handle a bird. In order to become avian board certified, which is Dr. Hilary Frank of North Central Animal Hospital, who is the vet that helps us out tremendously with her time and her talent, she is avian board certified. Above those 4 years of vet school, she studied to become avian board certified, which involved things astronomical, to the point where at the end you go through and you have to take tests and you have to do practicals where you stand in front of other vets and show what you're looking for, explain how you're doing it to prove that you know how to do this correctly.
Yeah, those are called practicals, and
Yeah.
they're unfun to say the least. And you're exactly right about the education that you get about birds. I took, a mixed rotation when I was in school, and I took, oh, Roxanne, what's she saying? She's bobbing up and down. Hi, sweetheart. And I took every exotics class that was offered, and we learned the anatomy and physiology of bird. We learned how to hold them, how to this, how that, how to get them with our blankie or our towel, depending on the size. And then, like I told you when we were together, I had gone to Australia, Tasmania, and Thailand to get my hands on some exotics and such, and learn from people that actually do it, such as yourself, but all manner of creatures. So my time with birds, even though I traveled the world trying to get my hands on everything I could, it's still extremely limited. I know things that other people that come out of vet school don't know, but I certainly wouldn't put up my shingle saying that I can do work with birds, because it's physiology, anatomy. We need to talk about respiration for sure, okay? And then it's medications, it's surgeries, it's anesthesia, it's pain management. It's how do these birds show that they're distressed. So if you don't mind, can we talk about how does a bird show it's distressed? How do we tell if Roxanne, like say they're cleaning my armpit there, is feeling okay, not feeling okay, fond of someone, getting upset, and or how does she show pain? How do we see these things in birds as an inexperienced owner and or veterinarian? Oh, hi.
I'll tell you what, let's let Tamara talk for just a second here. She's
Yeah.
got a little Quaker here, and
Yes.
and you can tell he's got some really nice bright coloring is the thing. His eyes are nice and bright. Those are the things that we're going to be looking for.
Good.
When it isn't well, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to puff themselves up.
Okay.
Get warm, and just like us, when we don't feel well, we want to crawl under the covers. Their feathers are their covers, and they puff themselves up to start creating that blanket of warmth for them.
Right.
And that's very, very important there. So that would be the first thing. She got pooped on. So we'll let Tamara go get cleaned up. How's that? You want to go ahead and that's why I want to show him for a quick section here.
Sure.
So he's going to go get cleaned up here because he did a good one there.
But
Uh,
this is such a great example of having birds, isn't it? I mean,
and here's Zeke. Here's one that also is in fairly good condition. He does have a little bit of a plucking problem, so that's something that we always have to be concerned about with these guys. Zeke, unfortunately, is missing a leg.
right.
His parent, I just introduced you to him just before we started here. His parent actually ate the leg off as he was hatching. And that has to do with the fact that birds, because they are so mass bred now, aren't always taught the nurturing qualities that they need to take care of their birds. And they saw this thing coming out of it and thought it was a toy and bit it off.
Oh, oh my gosh. So
Yeah,
how did that so somebody took him out of his nest and then hand raised him from just the minute that the leg happened, or how did they help him with his amputation? My gosh.
actually, a breeder here in the United States had this bird, and because they they're puppy mills.
Yes, yes, yes,
And
yes.
don't once they get to a certain age, they take the babies away from them so that the parents don't develop the nurturing qualities that they need. And it hatches, the bird went ahead and is coming out of the shell. They didn't understand what was going on because they had not had the lessons from their parents because they were taken away so early. And then they just bit the leg off. It was
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
toy, nothing living.
Yeah. Yeah. I have very, very, very strong opinions about puppy mills, and from a legal standpoint, ethical standpoint, moral standpoint, and the health and of the puppies, and as you're saying, the mothers, right? And that what it is that they go through, and what it is that's taken away, and that their instincts, all that's a whole nother show. I understand that, but what you're saying is so important. So, hi Roxanne, hi sweetie. So that being said, we know that many of the birds are being sold at pet stores and through whoever are coming from a bird milling situation. So, in your opinion, your advice, what do we tell people about? I want to get a bird. I go to a rescue. Where do I go to best use my energy, my love, my time, my compassion, and my all my resources? How do I best help and not promote further bird milling? What do I do?
I'm always going to promote adoption first. That's
Yes.
where I'm at. I know a lot of wonderful breeders that take very good care of the birds at the same token, so that's definitely there. But the thing to realize is that your few minutes of interaction with a bird in a pet store is not going to be the bird that you take home. And you're going to spend a lot of money, and you're going to find out probably later that this bird isn't right for you or your family, and then they're going to end up with someone like me.
Mm-hmm. 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 I couldn't agree with you more. Now, when you and I first met, I had no, well, I guess we met by phone, voice to voice, but I had told you that I believe that birds were meant to fly, and and that's a very idealistic point of view, and that we make the best of our situations and such, but if we have somebody who thinks their bird in the house, let's say, should fly, or they think that birds are meant to fly outside, and you've gotten your bird from a pet store or somebody that wants to sell versus educate or advocate, well, what dangers are inherent in that? I guess my thought process that they should fly.
We always have to look at what the situation is. It would be wonderful if the birds could fly, but most of these birds are inside birds, which leads them to indoor hazards, such as
Hmm.
fans. Burners on stoves. I can't tell you how many birds will fly over onto a stove and they don't see that hot element and they land on it and burn their feet.
Right. Oh, gosh.
There's a lot of disadvantages to flying. And then if something should happen, and it happens all the time, a door gets open, a bird goes out the door, and there goes your bird.
Yeah. So what is it that you do, or you recommend for indoor birds to make sure that these hazards don't happen to them?
Well, we definitely promote flipping. And again, I understand people wanting to let the birds fly, but when you see as many of the downsides of it, you know that it's in the bird's best interest in the long run.
Right, 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 right. And then what's involved for us newbies in wing clipping? What I mean, you're not obviously clipping all their wings. You're not making them look like they had a really bad haircut or anything like that. So, what do we do?
Now, this is something where you really need to first off decide what it is that your lifestyle is for your bird. If you are taking your bird out and you have them on your shoulder and you're walking around up and down the street, we want to do a different type of cut for them than a bird that's always in the home, never goes outside, whereas we do a continental cut for them. The ones that are outside, we will do a full cut, which means we will cut, I guess the best way to describe that is birds basically have the same bone structure as we do. Their fingers are fused together. So what we do when they're going outside with you is we want to take the feathers up to this first joint usually. Sometimes a little less. Some vets prefer that you do like only the first 5 or 6 feathers. Some it's the joint. And again, that depends on the bird's ability to fly. If you have a bird with a really good muscle mass, they might be able to still get up off the ground with only those first 5 taken. So you always have to consider the bird itself. The continental cut, or it's a show cut, what some people call, is where we leave the 2 outer feathers and then we cut up to that joint and maybe take a couple extra ones just to offset the 2, where the bird can glide down but not fly up. That kind of helps them from hitting the ground and going splat.
Now, that was kind of my next question. Now, in order for a bird to fly, they have to have an extraordinary muscle mass, not only their back, their pecs, their wings, to get themselves up off the ground. So if we have a bird that's lived in a cage or lived on a piece of wood or has, maybe stretches once in a while, but doesn't do extraordinary amounts of exercise in order to get that muscle mass and the respiration to be fit, they're maybe not the best candidates to fly anyway. But when we have these birds that maybe fly off of a stick or a perch or those types of things, the cuts allow these guys to, just kind of coast down to the ground if they fell, rather than, like you said, going splat. They're able to kind of...
Here's where the difference is. If you are going outside and they catch the wind with the continental cut, there's a possibility they have enough feathers there that they could catch the wind and take off farther than you would like. So we always have to look at each individual case of what is the bird's lifestyle, what is it that you're doing with the bird before we start doing things like that.
All right, good. So now, if we have a bird and we have a veterinarian and we have good food and we've been safe, doing a continental cut or something that's bird specific, whatever their lifestyle is, just like you and I, let's say, what do we have to know about our environment in our home, the things that we should not have in our home, shouldn't spray in our home, shouldn't cook with in our home? What are our immediate hazards to our avian pets in our home? Or if a friend comes over and lights a cigarette, or those, what kind of things do you tell people that are absolutely detrimental to our birds, and they're different than our other fuzzy friends?
One of the biggest problems that birds have is they're highly susceptible to respiratory issues.
Yes.
That's that's the thing that's probably going to get them, is the thing. So cigarette smoking, it's not good for us, and it's definitely not good for them. We always have to look at the environment of our air quality simply by the fact that if you think that they go back into the mines with the canaries, and then when the canaries stop singing, this is when get out, because the canary, it wasn't healthy for the canary, it's definitely not healthy for us. So keep that always in mind. So we want to go ahead and look around the house, sense candles. Candles are a very big no-no. And it's not so much always the wax, but it's the fragrance that they put in the wax, or it's sometimes the wick is actually itself will cause a fume that will go out that can kill a bird.
Okay, all right, okay. So there's many components of a candle. I was thinking, when you said that, I was thinking the flame. I was thinking the flame would hurt the bird if the bird comes down there, which I guess is true, right? But all components of the candle, fragrance, wick, other things besides, I guess, the more obvious piece. So that's great information. I did not know that.
I've got candles that have never been lit. That's they look beautiful, but they're not getting lit. So that's one thing. Since like Febreze has been a very big issue in the years recently. because it's becoming such a popular scent, but it's also very deadly to the birds. A
Okay.
lot of Teflon pans. That's another very
Definitely.
controversial type of issue. The thing that you have to realize is the Teflon pans actually have to get over 500 degrees temperature to put out that fumes.
Oh my
So
gosh. Wow. Wow.
I do have Teflon pans, but I tell you what, I do not ever leave the kitchen when I use one of those pans. And that's where you always have to put, there's no 100% to anything. It's
Mm,
always realizing what is your commitment to keeping things safe
right.
along those ways. So
What about things like the position of my bird's environment? I was always taught that you don't want to be right next to a door because the draft coming in and out of that door, as compared to the temperature inside the house, the humidity inside the house, it may cause respiratory or conditional changes. Now, take that with a grain of salt, because I was in Indiana where it was cold. I mean, really cold. So having a bird, and these were budgies that I had, in a draft in Indiana, was probably not a really great idea. We didn't do it, of course, but the things that I learned about. Oh, look at her go. What are you doing? You trying to get some more attention back there, kiddo? She she's bobbing. She was bobbing. So
really,
what about
actually,
what? I didn't hear you. What'd you say?
being really, really quiet. I don't know whether to be pleased or concerned.
She's been grooming herself and scratching herself a little bit, and then she's bobbing for. I don't know if that's for attention or what she's doing. So, but she's just gorgeous.
It's for themselves a healthy bird.
Oh, okay, there you go. I love it. It's like a cow chewing its cud. I'm like, weird, but it's like they're healthy. So what about drafty environments or cold hots, or what do you think?
Definitely, again, anything that can affect the respiratory system is something we need to take a note of. Don't put them right underneath the air conditioning fan that's going to come on and off. That's just, we don't want to sit under there. They don't want to sit there either.
Okay. She's so cute. And then what about our signs of stress? Now, people, I guess, folks would know that there's feather plucking, right? I mean, when they actually either pull their feathers out, or maybe others, maybe not eating, maybe I don't know. The discharges, like when they have droppings, their actual activity level, their mood, what it is that you just said, right? She's grooming herself, and not in a horrible way like self-mutilating, so she's a happy bird. So if I were the owner of a bird and I just don't know, what signs do we see of maybe an unhealthy bird, an unhappy bird, or a super stressed bird in your house? What are we looking for?
The thing to always remember with birds is birds are not going to show what's wrong with them until the last minute
Yep.
is a given. So there's no automatic, oh, he's doing this and this means that. And they show it at such a late stage because they live in a very cruel environment. Is where they come from. And if you are in an environment where if you have a bad day, somebody will eat you, you learn to hide those issues because you can get eaten. So that being said, you really need to pay attention to your animal. If it's on the bottom of the cage, you have a huge problem right there.
Mm-hmm.
If they're starting to get puffed up, if they're not eating as much, if they're kind of mopey, again, look at the clarity of the eyes, you're looking at the color of the poop. It's all encompassing. No one bird's going to show you this one specific sign. It's going to be knowing what your bird is normal for your bird.
Okay. All right. So you have to be attentive. You have to be in a really, knowledgeable, and be really present with your bird. I mean, you have to know, just like with the blood work with the veterinarian. It's a bird to bird variation, and you just have to know and pay attention. And then if you have any questions, you got to make the phone call, right? You need to ask. You need to call you call your veterinarian, you do something, right? So yeah, because this show and everything it seems like you're doing, without putting words in your mouth, is advocating and educating for these guys. So never, in my opinion, one humble opinion is ask somebody. Don't assume, don't wait, because if these guys start to show you that they're acting a little bit weird, they've been doing it for a while and they've been hiding it from you. So much the same as some cat owners. Cats don't want to tell you either. They're going to hide someplace. Or it's just it's their environment. Like you said, if you have a bad day, somebody's going to eat you. It's not like you're going to sit in front of the TV with a remote control and take the day off of work. You're going to eat you. So it's quite serious. So it's just such a different way of thinking, isn't it? My gosh. The I would definitely wanted to ask you all of this awesome information and all of this experience, everything that you have to offer, and everyone that's going to watch this from now until hopefully forever. How do they get a hold of you? What would you like for them to do? Where do you want them to contact? What do you have to tell them with regard to my bird needs? I have a bird question. My bird needs help. My whatever it is. You pick up the phone or you go on the internet and you do what?
There's a lot of great places on the internet to look at, but just like everything, there's a lot of really not great places to look at. So always
Right.
be careful where you're seeking out your advice. Um, Professionals like licensed avian vets are going to be the first place to go to. If you have an issue, that would be my first place. You can call places like myself for your pet bird. We're in a situation where I'm not a vet. I cannot work on your vet. I can tell you what the crazy bird lady thinks might be going on and give you off-the-cuff advice, but the thing is you still need to invest and get your bird the medical attention that it needs. So that definitely. You can find us on our website, fallenfeathers.org. We have a phone number, 623-533-2348. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. So all those places you can find us, definitely. But depending on where you are, and like we said before, this is a global situation, so calling someone in Arizona may not be necessary. However, we have gotten calls from the Virgin Islands, believe it or not, because of the wonderful internet now. Somebody had a problem and they were just looking to get a hold of somebody to talk to, and we got a call from them there. So that was kind of an interesting call.
Isn't that cool? It kind of throws you off your mark for a second. You're like, you're calling from where? I'm like, how the heck?
That's like something. Maybe we should take a look at it. Why don't you bring it over? And then she goes, well, I'm in the Virgin Islands. And I said, oh, you will not be here before lunch, okay? So,
Oh, oh my God. Now there's one thing I really wanted you to touch on for everybody, and one of the other things that are near and dear to me is that I really like to make sure people understand the true constitution of a being, whether that dogs are pack animals, horses are herd animals, birds are flock animals. Yes, am I correct? So how do we emotionally, environmentally substitute a flock of their own for us, I guess, yes? So how is that um, shown, or what is our obligation as a flock member to them? And then you said something earlier about having a bird on your shoulder, and I made a mistake when I was with you, and I actually pet that sweet angel behind you below her neck. So everything is so different, right? Me patting my dog on the butt doesn't really mean the same thing it means as me patting her on the rear end, does it? So, but talk to me about the flock thing and um, uh, how that impacts them. You know, how is that important that people know that?
the first thing that comes to mind with being a flock is, yes, you are now the bird's flock when you adopt it. They're used to being with about 100 of their best friends all day long, and they want you to be with them. The first thing, when people complain about a bird squawking too much, the thing I tell them is a bird needs to have at least 2 squawks a day. They need to have one first thing in the morning, because this is what they normally do in the wild, where when they wake up, they want to see where everybody is. Hey, did you make it through the night? How'd you do? Did you have a good night's sleep? Hey, how you feeling today? They need to have that morning squawk to just check, make sure who's where. And then they also need one just before bedtime. And for us older people, if you remember the Waltons, good night, Aaron. Good night, John Boy. Good night. Like, you want to know where you are before they go to bed.
Right,
So
right.
off the call, and where they want to hear a response so that they know that it's okay because everybody's where they are. I can go to sleep, and the next morning we're going to wake up. We're going to check them. So yes, a lot of people want their birds to be quiet, but realize there are some things that they have to have for their own mental health is to have these 2 squawks a day. So that's the first thing. Then you've got the situations where how do you become a good flock member? And the bird that's at the highest point of any flock is the one that's in charge of everyone below. If you adopt a bird, you need to be the big bird. You need to be the one at the head, and that's where when you put the bird on your shoulder, their eye level is above yours, they think they're in charge, and you're going to have issues because they're going to
Mm-hmm.
challenge you. They want to be the bigger bird.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want you doing that. Plus the fact that a lot of people realize a bird like this can open a Brazil nut, and I can't do it with a hammer. He does it. You have now put that next to your face.
Right. Right. I have the utmost respect for that gigantic beak of hers and her pure power. And when I was at your house, I was learning while she was fluffing up her feathers on the back of her head, or she was doing what she did, and I was asking questions. And then your husband walks by with a croissant roll in his hand, and she turns around, she looks at him, and he gives her this itsy bitsy piece of croissant roll, and she picks it up like it's a tiny piece of glass and just rolls it delicately in that gigantic beak of hers, like it's the most wonderful thing she's ever had, and this big leathery tongue, and she was so delicate. But you forget that she's got the ability to crack, this with no problem whatsoever. So you got to have respect where it's due.
Respect the beak, definitely. But if you don't want you getting extra body piercings that you don't necessarily want by having, in fact, I had a woman here yesterday that was very upset. She had a little cockatiel on her shoulder. Guess who ate her diamond earring?
Well,
Right out of that stone, and it was gone. And so now they're on poop alert. Every time the poops, they can find this earring now.
right, right, right. And the thing is that can't feel good for bird having a diamond earring, going through all the avenues it's got to go through to end up in the poop, right? So you just don't want them next to somewhere where they're going to steal something or bite you. So
that's very true. As you want to be able to touch your bird all over its body, because there's going to be times you want to check for lumps and bumps and that. But what we don't want you doing is we don't want you sitting there stroking below the neck. Anything below the neck of a bird is sexual. And we don't want to be getting them overly excited in ways that they really don't need to be.
Yeah, and then the thing is that there's quite a few stories about the bonding that goes on, and you'll have a bird that literally is in love with and protective of its human, be it a man or a woman, and then that human tries to get into another relationship with a different human, and bird is like, I don't think so, this one's mine, and that really strong, and there is a sexual component to it, of course, and they can become quite defensive or quite angry or whatever, just like a bad relationship, or you can't have a boyfriend or girlfriend because you're mine. And it's true, isn't it? I mean, these birds actually bond to you, yes?
Oh, definitely. I think one of our funniest stories was the fact we had a Patagonian conure, much like Mr. Zeke here.
Beauty.
My son came home from military boot camp. He was in the Marines. One of our toughest, meanest fighting machines, he walked over and gave his sister a hug. The bird came flying from around the room and chased him down. He was standing on top of the pool table to get away from the bird. So it's funny that, but the bird was adamant that this was his person, and he could have squished him with his foot. I mean, he was a trained killer at this point. He's a Marine. And he's getting from a bird because they can be very frightening, especially if you're not used to them.
Well, you know what? Truer words were never said, right? Because you kind of have this, I can beat you in a fair fight. I mean, every molecule of my being, while I'm sitting there, says, you know what? You're only 5 pounds. I could probably take you in a fair fight. But you have this bird with that beak coming after you, and you have no idea how to respond. So it's like people that see a mouse or a snake or something. You just panic, don't you? You just panic. So I can totally, and then the emotion that's going on in that bird is like, I'm coming right at you, buddy, so you better just tuck tail. So
get out of my way. This bird was also, if we were just sitting on the couch watching TV, the bird would come and sit between the two of us.
Yeah.
This is mine.
Yeah. And do you find that people have difficulty recognizing that, or is that one of the behaviors that sometimes breaks up a bird-human bond? Because that human-animal bond is so important, but the understanding on the human's part is vital.
That quite often is the reason that we end up with a bird here, is because we had a woman that had a bird for 35 years. Her parents gave her the birds when she was 5 years old. She was now married and had children, and the bird hated the husband, and he had a fear that the bird was going to eat the children, and she the bird because unfortunately in this situation the husband threatened to divorce her and take the children because she had basically a pit bull as a
Oh.
animal. So these are things that, especially the longevity of these guys,
Hmm.
they're only 35 and they're still kicking. They're going
Yeah.
to be good for another 30 years.
Yeah, at least.
But
Now,
she give away these birds that she loved.
so that's such a great example. It's such a great lead, and I really appreciate that. Now, so we have a bird that has been in a relationship with somebody for 30 something years, and then they get sent away. Now, can you describe the you know, it's anthropomorphizing and giving human emotions to animals, which I'm 100% believer in. But these guys, in my opinion, you know, as humble as it is compared to you, of course, is they're emotional, loving, caring, feeling pain, feeling desert. I mean, tell me about that component of their life, because I gotta be honest with you, I saw some of your birds that had been in relationships for 20, 30 years, and then they got left. And I'm like, they got, you know, the desertion or the, where's my human? And like you said, they might think that my family died. There's a huge grieving process, emotional. I mean, I just, some people don't, I don't think some people give due process to these guys and think, oh, it's just a bird. Sometimes, like where I hear, oh, it's just a dog. Oh my gosh, no pun intended, but my feathers go up. I mean, it's like you've clearly never even had a dog if you think that way. So, talk to me about that piece of it, that emotional piece of a bird, if you don't mind.
This is something where we're fortunate for, and I should let Tamara talk about this some
Sure.
because she's part of this process, is when we get a bird that comes in, the fact that we have volunteers and of such a variety and personalities, because it's a personality match with a bird. It's not just the fact that I like a bird. They're looking for that someone that they feel a common bond with.
Mm.
And I refer to Tamara here as the Quaker Queen. Yes, okay. And she knows, and it's very, it's very, it's in a nice way, nothing bad there. But Tamara has a way with Quakers, and she can walk up to the meanest, nastiest Quaker that we could have, and they will love her. And
Awesome.
this is where she has a couple of Quakers, and no more. Mom, she's not taking any more, I promise. But she comes for like this little guy that she's playing with here, where she's getting him now to a friendly state where he can then feel that he's open to another person because she already has that Quaker connection going for him to help him along the way. We
Wow.
also for their toys, their cage, everything, all their comforts to come with them when we turn them in. I want to take my luggage and my shampoo and my curling iron and my pillow with me. They're going to want to do the same.
Mm.
So, Karen, do you want to say anything about people when they adopt?
Um, like you expect one thing. So when I first came, I wanted like one of the big guys,
Uh-huh.
and kind of like you're not quite sure about it, and then when you start playing with them, they kind of give you that strange emotion. They're like, I'm not sure quite of you, and you're not really sure like if they like you. And then I was kind of having doubts, and so I asked her, and then she showed me like a pair I never even realized was there, which was a picture.
Okay.
And we go in there, and he was like trying to bite me and stuff, and he was like trying to get in the cage. He was like protective over it. And like the next couple of days, he starts like opening it up and lets me get him from the cage. And
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So you guys, he kind of tried to open up to you a little bit, or was you felt like enough trust in you to start doing something he wasn't doing before, and then what? How did that feel for you? I mean, you thought you were going to go one way, and then this bird kind of, you guys have a bond, or you just kind of feel comfortable with each other, or how did that come about? And then you clearly are like, I understand you're the Quaker Queen. I met you with all your wonderful birds, and they saw you petting them the whole time. They love you so much. Did that just feel really comfortable for you to continue on after that? Because I know it only happened after a couple of days or so while you were with them.
um, the fact that I could like finally be able to take him out, and then you can like start seeing how their personality is. Because after a while, I heard him start talking, he started getting like comfortable. And once I even took him home, he started like trying to escape out of the cage and wake me up in the morning.
So you definitely he made you his person, right? It wasn't like he's your bird. It's like you're his person. He's like, wake up, Tamara, wake up, we gotta go. And did he do his 2 squawks a day with you? I like
Yeah,
it.
yeah, in the morning.
That's what it is like. I myself have got chickens. I've got chickens. I love them so much. And in the morning, there's no way it could possibly be sunup when that rooster goes off in the morning. I lay there, I'm like, oh, you're kidding me, right? You got to be kidding me. And he's just seems so unreasonable and so spoiled. You go out there and you have a long talk with them, and you're like, really, it's hard. The sun's hardly up, and then you're talking to the girls out there, and everyone's got their own personalities. So I don't have what you have with these guys. Hopefully, I'll keep working on it. But the relationship with these birds, and to hear people say or think or be trained by their family or their environment that birds are just birds, whether they're flying overhead, giving you eggs, or in an environment like you guys have, I'm not buying it anymore. I mean, these guys are so emotional, they're so intelligent, and I think it's funny that they pick us instead of the opposite way. So it's an ego. It kind of knocks your ego down, doesn't it? It's like, I think I want that gorgeous red bird, and then you end up with these guys who are biting you and yelling at you first thing in the morning.
And this is where I kind of come in as the matchmaker. And because I do allow people, yeah, keep working with them. And then eventually, like she said, I said, hey, why don't you take a look at this guy over here? And a lot of it is now I learned her personality and I knew the bird's personality, and then we can kind of match that as opposed to what's going to look good in the room.
Now you had said something when I was there about how somebody thinks they have a match, and you go home for 2 days, and then they come back to your place, and maybe, okay, so I go home for another couple days with this bird, and then they go, oh, this is not going to work out because either it's waking me up or this, whatever it is, all the things you think you have, the rosy picture, when you get home, you don't want these birds being returned for something that you didn't know was going to happen. So you guys do what you call them, sleepovers or something, right? Something like that?
They ease into it on both sides. The family that's adopting can ease into the situation to see if it's right for them, but also the bird coming back. And this was one bird that we specifically had that went to the sleepover. The person came back, oh, it went fabulous, and she went to take the bird out of the cage and take it back home again, and the bird ran to the back of the cage.
Oh yeah, no good, no good, no good.
And then I could intervene for him and say, hey, you know what? This doesn't seem to be working out as great. Why don't we maybe try this little guy over here? I think you might be a little more interested, because we don't want to put the bird in a situation where he's not going to be happy.
Right, right. That's so important. Now, can just like Tamara here, can you tell me about your volunteer situation? I was overwhelmed by the amount of people that came in and out of your house, and everyone, and then the amount of people that says, "Oh, there are more volunteers here." I mean, it must have happened 5 times while I was there. That just groups like a family or 2 people or 3 people came and they were volunteers. How important is that to your organization? How the heck are you spreading the word to get that many wonderful people to help you out? It's wonderful, wonderful.
A lot of it is when people bring a bird, I tell everybody we need your time, your talent, and your money, and not always in that order.
Right, right.
People to come back and help us out in any way, shape, or form that they can. And the fact that we do, this is a family. And you probably noticed that when you were here, the volunteers all are here for a common reason, but they also develop the family ability too, where they take care of each other outside of it.
Yeah. Oh, it's an amazing thing. Oh.
So breaking the perch. They are eating the perch. It is a pie in red.
That was fantastic because everyone just goes and turns around like, what the heck? I think she wants some more attention. Yeah, she's been doing this her whole body bobbing up and down thing. Is she bored, or what do you think? She wants some more attention, or this bobbing up and down?
Look at me. It's you just want to make sure. It's like, hey there, Roxanne. How you doing? Oh, look at your baby. And you see she's getting excited and she's kind of fluffing up her feathers and I'm paying attention. So yeah. So hey, how you doing there?
The little feathers going up. Yeah.
Oh, I know. So yeah. So she's looking for some attention.
She's so silly.
So
All right, so you have gone over so many things today about acquiring a bird into your life, being an advocate for these birds, forming a bond that hopefully will live until death do us part, which could be 100 years from now, and doing appropriate vet care, appropriate food, appropriate handling, appropriate monitoring at home, and having a really great relationship with these guys, and then you and your organization and your volunteers, such as Tamara and the Quaker girl, which was so funny because you go, it's a bird, not a religion. So that's probably important that we get that cleared up, that it's a bird. You have a volunteer network, and then you guys, as we'll talk about in the next hour, do a lot of education. So you really are all encompassing. You are really a kind of a holistic way of looking at a bird. So every avenue that folks might need help with or are deficient in, you guys end up dealing with that or trying to help. So that's so important. So can you spend the last couple of minutes that we have together telling people again what is it that you want people to know globally, and how do they like I said, get a hold of you or their environment, or what do you want them to do to be better bird advocates? What do you think?
The biggest thing is to realize that they are living, feeling creatures. You walked into my garage there wasn't a single personality that was the same. They're all individual, all going to have their own special needs, and trying to figure out what those are. It's like a mom in a lot of ways, because you got to find out what your kids want, and usually they don't want to tell you what it is. You really have to be observant and watch and see what it is that's going on for them. The care that they should get. So many people think, oh, I'll take my dog or cat to a vet to get checkups, but they don't think of that same thing for their bird. I think that's one of the sad things about it. They wait until they're sick, and then it's always a panic situation because they don't show how sick they are until it's too late.
Right.
The saddest things is when I get a call that somebody will say, my bird just died and I don't know what happened, and we start reviewing what the bird's been doing the last few days, and I can tell them just from what I hear them saying what was wrong with their bird. And it would have been fixed if we would have just addressed it a few days earlier. So the biggest thing is that we're here to care for them. And if you're going to own a bird, it is going to be expensive. People say, people think that, bird seed is cheap. No, it's not. Stuff, it's not. So they're not inexpensive, throwaway type of animals just because they're smaller. Like I said, I just hate the fact that they're being seen as a throwaway society. And that's a lot of what's happening with our exotics out here now. Look on Craigslist, and well, in fact, one we just had recently that you saw was a Pyonis. The bird had a broken leg, and it was broken for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Couldn't afford a vet bill, but they were trying to sell it on Craigslist, is the thing. And once that nobody would buy a bird with a broken leg, he went ahead and finally gave me the bird, and I had to fight him for the cage too, and made him give me that while he was at it. But he didn't want to, and a lot of my reasoning for wanting the cage and the bird food and toys is not just for the comfort of them. Is I have to look at the fact of why are they getting rid of the bird to begin with, and this started with Barney, which was a sulfur-crested cockatoo. It had been abused for 20 years. It had been with a groom for 5 years. They then gave it to some other people that put it out in the backyard. It was given to kids who would take it to frat parties and get it drunk. They finally had taken it back. He had lived in the backyard behind 2.5 acres in a cage by himself for 8 years and fucked himself completely.
So that's about a horrifying story. I mean, it's just about horrifying, isn't it? Oh, good.
Birds, and when they told me, I said, well, yeah, I can take it. And this was back when I first started doing birds. I didn't have a lot of big cages, and I said, and I'll get the cage. She goes, oh, you really need the cage because we want to get another bird. We want to get a nice one. They didn't realize all the things that they had done was causing the bird to be that way. I did have Barney until he passed away. He was my sweetie, and the nicest bird on the face of the earth. But because the bird wasn't responding the way that they assumed that it would, and not realizing that their way of handling the situation was making the very thing that they didn't like worse,
Worse.
ended up giving the bird a really terrible start, but luckily we gave him a good finish.
Oh, okay. You know, and the thing is, bless you guys, because it wouldn't have ended that way if Bird didn't get to you guys. I mean that's just I mean that's the bottom line, and that you I personally I horrified at the idea of how many of these animals we never hear about that live the same life that you just described, and that you know. So bless you guys for what you're doing, and thank you so much for your time. And I'm planning on bothering you again very soon, within a couple minutes here, to talk about what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about rescues and raptors and releases and education and federal certification to do the expertise work that you guys do. So for now, thank you guys so much for all of your time and your expertise. And I'd just like to ask you to close it with telling the world how to get a hold of you guys, okay? And listen, thanks so much. Thanks so much. And I'll see you guys very soon.
Okay, we're at fallenfeathers.org. Look us up there on the web. We also have a Facebook page of Fallen Feathers Rescue Rehabilitation Education. We have a YouTube channel with a lot of really fun videos for you to see.
Yeah.
That's Fallen Feathers Rescue channel, and we are on Twitter. So those are all good places to give us a call.
Thank you very, very much for your time, and I hope the whole world watches this and tweets and retweets or whatever they have to do to spread the word that these guys need this kind of help, need this kind of love and care, and that folks like you exist. So once again, thank you guys so much, and I'll talk to you again very, very soon. Bye, guys. I know. I need to see her soon. Look at her go. Bye, guys.